It's Countdown to Christmas Crafting. Today is video number 11 in the series, and we're doing Project 19. Today I am doing thrifting. I'm taking items that I thrifted a long time ago. They've been in my stash, ready to be upcycled into something beautiful. And today's the day I'm going to make 4 different items that have been purchased at yard sales, that have been purchased at flea markets, or that we've just had somehow or other. They've been gifted to us because someone else didn't want to throw them away. And we're going to turn them into beautiful gifts for our friends and family during the holidays. And the first piece is that vase that you saw in the beginning, sitting in the yard at a tag sale. The first thing I want to do with this is clean it really, really well, and then I actually wipe it down with denatured alcohol before I start painting it with Pentart bonding primer, which has really been my go-to for the bottom layer of these super shiny pieces. Once that layer of bonding primer was on, I gave it a good long time to dry. And then I started working on the vase to give it that rustic look. Now, I didn't video the first step, which is going to be the exact same as the second step that we're going to do now, which was stippling on a layer of paint and salt wash. The first layer was a super soft gray, and the second layer is going to be a dark, dark gray. And I am just mixing in the salt wash and then stippling it on the whole thing. And that is exactly what I did with that soft gray piece part, the first part. And it just takes a little time. That's all it is. Super, super simple, but it is it makes a great look. I've been looking at these rustic vases for a while, and I really wanted to try my hand at making one. Now, I paid $1 for this vase in its state, sitting in the yard at a yard sale. And the vase that I am imitating costs $60. So I think doing this process is definitely a money saver. So what you do is you stipple on a couple coats. Once this second dark, dark gray coat is dry, I will then sand it back a little bit so that I get the two-tone, because that is what really gives you that rustic look, is having the little lighter pebbles showing through the finish. And there it is, sanded back. So it's been sanded. And there's a picture of the vase that I am trying to make, like, to create. And what I'm doing now is, because both of the paints that I use were Wise Owl chalk synthesis paint, they need a top coat and a finish. And I am using black walnut furniture wax, and I am just waxing the whole thing. Now, it looks like it's going to be really dark, but in reality, you're going to see both colors coming through when it's done. You do get a little bit of work out on your arm when you're waxing this whole vase. But once it's done, it's absolutely gorgeous. And there is my vase done, and there is the one from Crate and Barrel. Our next project is this tray of a thrift store find, which I purchased for $1. It was a rusty Coca-Cola tray, and we were going to use it last year, so it already had a finish on the front, but we never did a finish on the back. So what I'm doing is I am just putting a Rust-Oleum finish on the back to kind of even off the front and the back. We've already sanded and put a primer on the front, and actually even put a coat of paint on it. So I decided I want to make this pink. I love the DIY vintage pink. It's a one coat paint, And that is what it's not a one coat, all in one paint. It's actually took 4 coats to get this thing painted, but it's just such the beautiful pink. And I wanted to use one of the new Christmas transfers with the red and the kind of peachy flowers. And I thought it would look really beautiful on this vintage pink DIY paint. So I went ahead and put my first light coat of paint on, let it dry thoroughly, and figured, oh, maybe I'll just need 2 coats. And then I put a second coat on, and then I put a third coat on, and the fourth coat was a charm. There it is, 4 coats of paint, ready for a transfer. So the transfer that I am using is actually the Kitschy Christmas, and I am using the big floral. And I am going to just put that in the middle, and I'm going to continue putting little pieces of holly and of the other transfers all around the edges till I get the look I want. And I cut the little pieces up to make them fit in those little curved corners, and just keep going at it till I like it. I love holly and berries, so that is why I continue to add little pieces of the transfers around the edges. Plus, there are so many pieces in the transfers from IOD, the Christmas transfer for this year, 2024. They're absolutely gorgeous. Lots of little berries and lots of holly. And just having those roses in the center, I think really sets it off. And then adding just the little bits of holly and berry around the edges makes it the perfect tray. I did have to dig into the Yuletide transfer also to get a few different color hollies and some more berries to put on the tray. I am super happy with the colors, with the pink. This vintage pink is just absolutely gorgeous, and I am super happy with how this tray came out. The only problem I had is I didn't like the way some of the transfers had little bits in that little groove that was along the edge, and I wanted to neaten it up a little bit. So I took the vintage pink and I went all along the edges and got a nice, smooth, even um, just evened out that edge so that there was a nice flat line, nice straight line along the edge, and everything looked really done, finished. It did take 2 or 3 coats of paint to cover all of that little bit of transfer up, but when it was done, it was exactly what I wanted. And I also did a spray top coat, a couple coats of a spray varnish, and I am not sure if I'm going to do a pour or not. Project number 3 in our Christmas crafting is this box, which actually looks like a hat box, but it is a cheese box. It's a super small cheese box, and it is probably from 1980s when I guess that country look was really popular. Again, I got it at a thrift store. I paid just about nothing for it, and I am going to use the AB Studios farmhouse um, rice paper, and we are going to cover this and make it look like a kind of a muted farmhouse box. And first thing I did is I did use the Pentart bonding primer on this box. I just gave it 1 coat and probably should have given it a couple coats because it is pine and it is kind of raw wood and it did bleed through a little bit, but it just added to the vintage look at the end, and I actually kind of liked it. The second thing I did was put a coat of chalk synthesis paint, and this color is called sea salt, and it is the perfect color for that kind of Nordic Christmassy look, and it works perfect with the AB Studios farmhouse rice papers. After that dried, I actually went ahead and sealed it with a coat of Wise Owl varnish. And the reason I did that is because the chalk paint would tend to just absorb the decoupage medium when I was trying to decoupage it, and I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. The box is raw wood. It's very, very textured, and you'll see it's a little bit difficult to get a really smooth line when you are decoupaging. Here I am going to do the top first, and I am going ahead and using a paintbrush with a little bit of water so I can tear that. The top is really uneven, and I'm kind of don't want to have a really straight edge, so I am just going to go ahead and keep it pretty uneven. I'm using Wise Owl varnish as my decoupage medium, and I am just going to go ahead and put that big wreath, which is the AB Studios farmhouse wreath. So it has a wreath up at the top, and it has some typography at the top and the bottom of the page. Next step was to cut out the AB Studios Farmhouse Minis, and this is a page of 9 minis. And I want to get rid of that white edge. So that's why and I did not want to have a jagged edge. Basically, I don't want to lose any of these designs. They're very closely printed together, and I want the whole design. So I cut them out. And I measured and made sure that I would have enough room and left about a quarter of an inch in between each little design to put the next design. And then I just finished the top with a coat of varnish and let that dry. This box is really super fun, but you can see it is not definitely not airtight. You couldn't put anything tiny in it. So I would recommend maybe the person who gets this as a gift, put paper in there or something, something that you're not worried about slipping through the cracks. I went ahead and started it at the bottom. I had a little extra room at the top, and I realized I was going to lose some of the design, but it worked out fine. So about a quarter an inch in between each one of these little designs, and starting in the middle to decoupage them and then pushing the sides. I got them all, and I did have to keep adding a little extra varnish. But you'll see this rice paper has those big lines in it. Those are actually threads, and they are in the paper. And I just continued around the whole box with these. And it was kind of random. Some of the pictures are similar, but and they all have a little bit of sentiment on them. They say either winter wishes, Merry Christmas, but they're all just that same really great colorways, really, really muted, very, very I really think it's like a European, Scandinavian or Swedish type of a Christmas design, and I love it. You'll notice I bobble the thing a lot. It's a little difficult to decoupage something that's this shape and do it and make sure it's in the camera. So it may not always be perfectly in the camera, but that's why it's just a little bit difficult to get it so that you could see everything. And once the last piece was decoupaged onto the box, I worked on the top. Now, the lid had a little bit of a um, kind of an oval shape, so it's kind of difficult to make sure that I get it exactly. I can't even out the two ends with the nails in them. But I did want to put some of the typography on the lid. So there is a little piece of typography on the top and the bottom of that paper, and I'm going to cut it out the same way as I did the wreath, pretty ragged because I want to be able to sand it back and keep it a little bit ragged looking. So I use the paintbrush and the water method, and I get that cut out. I wasn't sure about the typography, how it was going to look at the top, but it turned out to be one of my favorite features. And I think I am going to go ahead and put the typography on that bottom band also. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it. So it's just putting those, and they don't match. They're kind of a little bit arbitrary. They say different things, and it's not even, but it is perfect for this application of this kind of funky beat up cheese box. The colors of this box and the design, I think, are just so pretty. I really don't think they just scream Christmas at all. So I think that this gift get left out all year. You could see the words a little bit December, Christmas, peace on earth, perfect little Christmas sentiment. And one of the pieces, the bottom piece, was a lot bigger than the top piece. So again, I just sanded it back so that it was the same size and fit perfectly. I did put 2 coats of matte varnish over the whole project, but I think I may want to go back with the gloss and really have it be a little bit glossy. So here it is, all done. The cheese box, little funky cheese box, big difference from what it looked like when I started. My last thrifted Christmas gift is this lunchbox, which I got at Brimfield Flea Market. Now, you'd think I would have gotten it real cheap, but I didn't. I paid more than I wanted to, but I've wanted one of these forever. And it was pretty grimy. It was dented in. We couldn't get the dents out. We bent it and it just bent a different way. So we left the dents in. First thing I did was scrub it with a brush, some hot water and some cleaner, some degreaser. And then I used my Pentart bonding primer and primed the whole thing. After I finished priming it, I decided I was going to paint it red. So I am using Veronica Vaughn, which is a Wise Owl paint, and it is a 1 hour enamel. So it will have a really nice satin sheen when it's done. It took 3 coats of paint to get this coverage. And again, I just let it dry in between each coat and painted the whole thing. I didn't paint the latch or the handle. Later on, I do paint the bottom, same red, but I didn't paint the latches till after I was all done, so you won't get a chance to see them. Wasn't sure what color I wanted to paint them, and I knew I was putting floral transfers on it, so I figured I would wait. So the transfer that I'm using is called the Rose Botanical, and it is 8 pages of gorgeous roses in several different sizes. And I am using one of the smaller size sheets, one of the sheets with the smaller size roses. And I really want to use the yellows and the peaches because I just think they will look gorgeous with this red. So I cut them out and I go ahead and I start burnishing them down. Now it's a little difficult to burnish over something with this kind of a just the angles and the bumps and the way the shape of the lunch boxes. So what I do is I cut them. I cut them and move them around so that I can fit them in between the ridges and in between the latches. And I cut them and add little pieces at the end. I add a little piece for on over that overlap so that you don't see where it actually continues that rose from the top right to the bottom. You'll see at the very end. One of the things I like to do a lot is cut the transfers to fit your design. or to fit your project, not try to make your project fit the transfers, but cut the transfers to fit your design. So I cut them and move them around and change the stems on some of them, change the leaves. They may have come with one, they end up on the lunchbox with another flower. But in the end, it comes out perfect. And this is the trickiest part of the whole project, getting some of that flour underneath that handle. So I cut a chunk of it out and just fit it in there. And I also wanted to make sure that that flower didn't look like it was coming from nowhere. So I kind of fit it into another flower stem. And you could see it's difficult. It takes a little time, but it's very doable. And I kept going and just covered the whole lunchbox, including the two ends. I put a nice flower on the two ends. And the Rose Botanical also comes with some typography. So I used the typography on the front, and I also used a piece on the back. You can get this transfer from Steel Roots Market, and I will put their information in the description of this video. But that is where I purchased this transfer. There's the front all done. You can see it all done. And here comes the back all done. A little less flowers on the back. Each end has a really beautiful rose, and it's done. I did also put a coat of varnish over the whole thing, and I will probably put a second coat over it before I give it as a gift. Thanks for watching and being a part of our Countdown to Christmas series.